Israel has just received a serious and highly unusual warning from Europe. In a move that is already reshaping diplomatic calculations across the Mediterranean, Italy has deployed a naval warship to protect a humanitarian aid flotilla bound for Gaza following reports of drone activity and attempted interference at sea. This decision, authorized at the highest level of the Italian government, signals a sharp escalation in international involvement and could dramatically alter the dynamics of the Gaza crisis. According to multiple reports, the flotilla made up of civilian vessels carrying food, medicine, and essential humanitarian supplies came under apparent drone surveillance while transiting international waters in the Mediterranean. Activists on board reported loud explosions nearby, electronic interference with communications, and technical disruptions that forced at least one vessel to slow or temporarily halt its journey. While no ship was sunk and there were no confirmed fatalities, the incident raised immediate alarms in European capitals, particularly in Rome. In response, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni personally approved the deployment of an Italian Navy frigate to escort the flotilla and secure its passage. The Italian government made it clear that this was not a symbolic gesture. The warship has a direct mandate to protect civilian vessels and ensure that humanitarian aid is not obstructed on its way to Gaza. For a NATO member to take such a step is extraordinary and sends a powerful signal to all parties involved. Italy's move places it squarely in the middle of one of the world's most sensitive conflicts. For years, aid flotillas attempting to reach Gaza have operated largely without state protection, relying on international law and media attention rather than military backing. Most European governments have avoided direct involvement, wary of provoking Israel or becoming entangled in a volatile security situation. Rome has now broken that pattern, fundamentally changing the risk calculus at sea. The Italian government has framed the decision as both a humanitarian obligation and a matter of national responsibility. Italian officials confirmed that some Italian citizens are among those aboard the flotilla, making their safety a direct concern of the state. Beyond that, pressure has been mounting inside Italy from humanitarian organizations, the Catholic Church, and segments of the public demanding stronger action in response to the worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza. By deploying a warship, Meloni's government is presenting itself as a defender of civilian life and international law. There is also a clear political dimension. Italy has long played a role in peacekeeping and mediation efforts in the Middle East, including major contributions to UN missions in Lebanon. This action reinforces Rome's self-image as a stabilizing force and a protector of civilians. At a time when other major European powers have been cautious or divided, Italy's assertive stance allows it to step into a leadership role on the Gaza issue, potentially shaping broader European policy. From Israel's perspective, the situation is deeply complicated. Israeli authorities have consistently argued that maritime convoys heading toward Gaza pose a security risk, claiming that militant groups such as Hamas could exploit humanitarian shipments to smuggle weapons, technology, or dual-use materials. In the past, the Israeli Navy has intercepted flotillas, boarded civilian ships, and redirected them to Israeli ports for inspection. However, attempting such an operation while an Italian naval vessel is present would carry enormous diplomatic and military risks. A confrontation involving an Italian warship would not be a routine security incident. It would risk triggering a serious crisis with a NATO member and potentially draw in the European Union and other international actors. At the same time, allowing the flotilla to proceed without inspection could set a precedent that Israel fears may weaken its blockade policy. This dilemma explains why Israeli media is reporting intense debate within the security cabinet, with officials weighing the costs of confrontation against the implications of restraint. The broader regional implications are equally significant. Across the Arab world, Italy's decision is being closely watched and, in many capitals, quietly welcomed. Countries that have long criticized Israel's restrictions on Gaza are likely to praise Rome for taking what they see as a principled stand. This could strengthen Italy's diplomatic ties in the Middle East and give it greater influence in future ceasefire negotiations or humanitarian arrangements. Washington is also paying close attention. The United States remains Israel's closest ally, but has repeatedly expressed concern about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. If Italy's intervention helps deliver aid without violence, it could ease some pressure on the Biden administration. However, any clash at sea would place Washington in an extremely difficult position, forced to balance its support for Israel with the need to prevent a wider international crisis involving allies. Amid all the geopolitics, the human element remains central. On board the flotilla are doctors, aid workers, journalists, and activists from multiple countries, all attempting to deliver desperately needed supplies to a civilian population facing acute shortages. For them, the presence of the Italian Navy represents a significant morale boost and a sense that they are no longer operating in isolation. If the escort succeeds, it may encourage other governments to consider similar measures in the future, potentially transforming how humanitarian aid reaches Gaza. The coming days will be decisive. If the flotilla reaches its destination without incident, Italy will claim a major diplomatic and humanitarian victory, and the rules of engagement in the Mediterranean may begin to shift. If there is interference or escalation, the fallout could be swift and severe, involving NATO, the EU, and the United Nations. This moment is about far more than a single convoy. It raises fundamental questions about the protection of humanitarian missions, the limits of military blockades, and the willingness of states to actively defend civilian efforts in conflict zones. How Israel and Italy manage this standoff will not only shape their bilateral relationship, but could influence Europe's broader approach to the Gaza crisis for years to come.